Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a movie review for the movie Joker, Folie A Duex. I got the joy to go watch this with my father, and I will admit I really had a good time with this movie, and I liked it a lot more than the regular public consensus on it. So if I am insanely biased, I do want to go ahead and say that my experience might be a little biased because I went to see it with my old man. That guy is my hero in many ways, shapes, or form, and I watched the first movie with him, and I watched this movie with him, so it might have a little more sentiment in my heart. I am going to give it an honest review. I'm going to go through pros and cons, but that being said, let's dive into this.
Modern movie review.
Alrighty, so this movie's been out for a little over a week now, so I feel like I'm good to talk about spoilers and stuff like that. But that being said, if you haven't seen the movie and you do plan on potentially seeing it, maybe wait and hold off and go see the movie. But that being said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into this entire movie. As far as I'm concerned, I feel like the musical aspects of this film are relatively good for the most part. I do think that there are a lot of times where the musical elements feel like they kind of weren't sure if they wanted to make it a movie musical or if they wanted to have it a movie that has musical cutaways, because I will admit there are a lot of the elements of the musical stuff where it's randomly a fantasy and it's like a dream sequence in Arthur's head, and there's a couple of them where it starts off as like the regular life or whatever, and he'll like walk into a room and people will start like asking him questions, he'll get overwhelmed, and then all of a sudden he'll break out into a song, and like the moments like that I think work incredibly well in this. But then like stuff like from the trailers where they're showing like the Joker and Harley show, that all is fully in his head, and there's like 5 or 6 musical numbers that I think take place fully within his head, and it's in between cutaways, and I will admit that that part did kind of throw me off a little bit, but for the most part I think that all the songs worked. I think that a lot of the songs actually went incredibly well with this movie, to the point that like if you didn't know that this was a jukebox musical, you probably could go into this and just think that they made up all of the songs here. Like there are a couple that are obviously like more well known, but for the most part, sorry, my cat moved and all of my dogs freaked out, so I cut away awkwardly. But for the most part, I feel like a lot of the songs in here work well enough with the movie that like if you aren't familiar with some iconic songs from like the 50s and 60s and 70s or whatever, there's a good chance that you would go through this entire movie and think that they made the songs for this movie. And there's one in particular one where it's like a courtroom scene and Joker just randomly like busts into a dance number, and he's singing about being the Joker, and it literally does feel like a song that would have been made for this movie. I definitely think that the musical elements of this movie are fantastic. It's incredibly entertaining, and that's why a lot of people who are like really giving a hard time for this movie, their main complaint is that the movie is boring, and I just can't I can't agree with that. I feel like for the most part the musical numbers do a good job of keeping us engaged. For the most part, I think that the romantic subplot it's about as good as the romantic subplot in the first movie. And if you think about it, it's really weird because it's just like Arthur Fleck, this really weird guy, all of a sudden there's this girl that shows interest in him, and then like they both together like, you know, start having just happy-go-lucky relationship things, and like I mentioned, they do a lot of song and dance numbers together. But like I said, those are also fantasies. Those are also mostly in Arthur's head, and I think that for the most part, their romance, when it's fantasized and not actually real life, it works a lot better, because I feel like a lot of the love story that actually happens in real life is really dull and messy and not as interesting. Like there's a sex scene in the movie that is pretty uncomfortable to watch, and it actually feels like by design. Like it doesn't necessarily seem like it's like, and maybe it's just Joaquin Phoenix, because if I'm being totally honest, there was a sex scene in the movie Napoleon that came out last year that also had Joaquin Phoenix in it, and both of those are the most uncomfortable scenes I think I've ever watched in my life. But I feel like there is something where Todd Phillips probably intentionally was just like, we're going to make this look messy, we're going to make this really disappointing. And then I think that just overall, a lot of the relationship stuff doesn't really live up to the fantasy that Joker has in his head, and I feel like that's part of what they were going for with that. So for the most part, I think that the romantic subplot is okay. Harley Quinn in this movie is not Harley Quinn at all. She's completely the bad guy in this movie. She's really evil, and they never do a good job of explaining why she does any of the things that she does. Like she just kind of like does everything in this movie with zero motivation. It could be argued that she goes insane, but I don't really think she does, because she checks herself into Arkham. That's like a big twist in this movie, is that she's a psychiatrist or whatever. She's actually somebody who's, you know, going around doing therapy, trying to help out people with their psychological problems. And then for some reason, she's just like, you know what? I want to check myself into Arkham. So she does. And then she meets the Joker, and then she like sweet talks him, and it's just like, oh my God, I love you. They made a movie about you. It's really good. I can't believe I'm actually here talking to you right now. I grew up in the same city as you. But it's later revealed in the movie that she did not grow up in the same city with him, and pretty much everything that she's been saying to him about how much she loves him was a lie, and we don't get why she does that. And I think that that's part of the main reason why I have a gripe with that aspect of the movie. Everything that they did with Harley Quinn nothing to go, like, no shade on Lady Gaga. I think Lady Gaga played this role to perfection. I just think it was the way it was written was really weird. And for the most part, there's a lot of issues with that, where it's like, oh, okay, well, Harley Quinn is just randomly going to show up and she's just going to madly fall in love with the Joker. And the Joker is going to feel like, oh my God, somebody really needs me. And this is amazing. And this is awesome. And he's just kind of going to go with it. And he's going to fall madly in love. And it's going to kind of force him to do things that he wouldn't necessarily do. And something that I like about it, actually, is in the first movie, the Joker personality, or I say the Joker personality because in this film, they try to make it where it's like he's Arthur Fleck and then he's the Joker. And it's kind of like DID situation. And I like that because he spirals out of control in the first movie. You can literally see him going insane, and Todd Phillips used dance to show him losing his mind in the first movie, which is part of the reason why when this movie was announced that it was going to be a musical, I was like, hell yeah, I'm on board for that. But he's dancing very, like, poetically. He's doing ballet in the bathroom, and he's doing everything very choreographed. He seems to have everything under control. He seems very, fluent with his movements. And that's the scene after he just murdered the 3 guys in the train station or whatever. And then later in the movie, when he's going to the Murray Franklin show and he just killed the other clown guy, he's dancing all outrageously. There's no choreograph to it. It's just absolutely all over the place. It's rambunctious. It's chaotic. And I think that the way that he was able to use him being beat down so much to be the reason why Joker came out the first time. And then this movie, it's the opposite. Instead, it's love and it's positivity, and seeing that he has a bunch of fans brings out the worst in him. And I think that actually is an interesting commentary. Like, I think for the most part, my thing that I really liked about the Joker is it shows how, like, supporters can really negatively affect somebody. And I'm going to compare this to a real life event. For some people who follow TikTok, there's a guy named World of T-Shirts, and he's somebody who always had this big dream of moving to New York. He was going to move to New York and kind of like travel the world. And he was really excited to do it. He got to New York. He got his apartment. He would make cute little fun dancing videos in the streets of New York. He would go out and just like go onto Times Square and just sing, "In New York, concrete jungle where we dreams were made of." And, he would sing that song. And he was just like having the time of his life. But since he moved to New York, he's gotten some bad friends who live in New York, and he's been doing drugs. He's became an alcoholic. He's really down in the dumps, and he's constantly posting these videos where he's obviously drunk and he seems very miserable. And a lot of it is just all of his fans are like, yeah, we love this version of you. And it's really depressing because this movie shows how supporters can really enable the worst in somebody. And Arthur Fleck, in the 2 years in between this movie and the last movie, has been getting rehabilitation. He's been in a system that's actually been working for him. And I like that in this movie, instead of it being, oh, the system failed him and now he's a bad guy, it's the system is doing everything that they can. He's just has supporters and enablers in his life that are making him the way that he is. He has the problems that he has because of the people he surrounds himself with. And I think that is a powerful message. And I think that a lot of the stuff that they were trying to do with that worked for the most part. Like, I genuinely think that this movie is really interesting when you take it as a character study of somebody who's been through it all, somebody who's been through the worst, somebody who's been through the ringer, and now they're in prison and they're just trying to better themselves because they realize that they made a lot of mistakes. And I think that the decision to have him confess to the murders at the end of this movie and be like, I did kill them. And on top of that, he confesses to the killing of his mother, which he wasn't even getting tried for. And I think that is a very great character arc for this character. I think that a lot of people who walked away from this movie and were disappointed in it were mad because this movie ends with him being like, I'm not the Joker, I'm Arthur Fleck. That's what this movie was all about. In fact, a lot of people watched the first Joker movie and were upset because it didn't feel like the Joker. It felt like Taxi Driver. And now that they're coming out with the second movie and it's like, oh, by the way, I'm not Joker, that's awesome. That's what I wanted from the first movie. And they gave it to us in the second movie. And then on top of it, they do fun, colorful musical sequences. They have a lot of comedy in this movie, which I think works incredibly well. There's a couple of sequences where Joaquin Phoenix is, on trial. And they're talking about like really important like jury stuff. And he's just like making googly eyes at Lady Gaga. And it's kind of funny. And then eventually he decides to, be his own attorney or whatever. And he fires his lawyer or whatever. And he kisses her goodbye, which is just I love the reoccurring thing of him just kissing people. Like, I just think that that's hilarious, the fact that they brought that into this movie, because that was a big part, like, that was a big thing he did in the first movie, like, as improv. And then I think he kisses, like, 4 people in this movie. And I think that that's so funny. And then one of the actual funniest parts of this movie is whenever he starts defending himself, he puts on the Joker makeup, and he starts interviewing people. And he's interviewing Mr. Puddles, who, if you don't remember who that is, it's the midget clown from the first movie. That was, like, the only clown that was ever nice to him. And he's interviewing him, and he's grilling him about, is your last name actually Puddles? Because I don't think your name is actually Puddles. Seems a little convenient. And the guy's just like, my name is actually Puddles. And he's just like, you know, you are in the court. You have to be honest with me. And he's just like, yes, Arthur, my last name is Puddles. And he just kind of goes, he breaks his accent, completely breaks character. He goes, never mind. And then he just walks away. And it's so funny. Like, I genuinely do think that this movie is hilarious. Like, there are multiple times throughout this movie that I was laughing my ass off. What's it called? One of my favorites is they're constantly making jokes. Arthur is going to be getting the death penalty if he, you know, gets guilty of all of his things or whatever. And they're constantly making jokes to his face about, like, they're gonna kill this guy. And some guy asks for his signature or whatever. And he's going to do his signature or whatever, and he starts writing, put on a smile face or something. Put on a happy face or whatever he put on, like, the mirror in the Murray Franklin show or whatever. And then, what's it called? The guy, while he's signing it, says, they're gonna so kill this guy. And he crosses it out and put, I hope you get cancer. And it was just so funny. But yeah, I just think that this movie was hilarious. And for a movie called Joker, where he's trying to be he's trying to be a stand-up comedian, I think the fact that there are jokes that land work. My biggest gripe with this movie is the way that it ends. This is like massive spoiler. They killed the Joker at the end of this movie. He's in prison awaiting, you know, the electric chair or however they're going to kill him. And he's told, hey, you have a visitor. They pull him out into the hallway. And then somebody who's like a big Joker fanboy is like, wait, Arthur, before you go, can I tell you a joke? I really want to tell you a joke. And he says, you know, something about, you know, somebody who's like always been, you know, a big like representation for everybody, somebody who really gave everyone a voice and told them they really mattered. And, you know, what happens when that person stops being a voice of reason? And then, what's it called? Joker's like, yeah, what is it? And he says, you get what you fucking deserve. And then he stabs him to death. And that's how the movie ends. And in my opinion, I didn't like the fact that it was just a random guy. Because I think that they're setting it up throughout the movie or whatever. It's a guy who's like constantly staring him down and he's constantly laughing. And I think that the whole point is that he's supposed to be like the real Joker. Or at least that's how people are interpreting it online. And I think that he's just a fanboy, and him being murdered by a fanboy could have been interesting, but they didn't really set up the fact that this guy was a diehard fan of him, you know? But that being said, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I really don't know what a lot of people's problems with it. I give this movie a solid, like, 7.8 out of 10. The only real gripes that I have with this movie is I didn't like the ending, and I feel like Harley Quinn had no motive for any of the things that she was doing in this entire movie, and she was just being super evil is like really weird. And it kind of seems like in a way she was just supposed to be like that dark side of Arthur Fleck, just, you know, embodied and like brought into like a real person. That being said, she was actually there. She wasn't a figment of his imagination, so I don't get that. And then my other last complaint that I had was that a lot of the musical scenes kind of felt redundant because they kept being like, okay, well, here's a fantasy sequence and they're just going to sing. And then I think that they sang one of the specific songs like 3 times. And that specific one, I was also like, I'm getting tired of this. And you're not changing it up when you do the reprises. So why are you re-singing it? I don't know. But that being said, I enjoyed it. I definitely would recommend going and checking it out in theaters. For some reason, everybody wants this movie to flop miserably. And I thought it was good. I think that Todd Phillips did a good job with it. I think, once again, Joaquin Phoenix did a solid job with it. I think Lady Gaga was there. I'm kidding. She did a great job. The writing for her character was not great. But that being said, it was a solid movie. And I'm going to go ahead and leave this video here. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.